Jesus is still hanging out in Capernaum, and people are still coming to hear him speak. One day, Jesus entered a house, and he was followed by a massively huge crowd. These people gathered because they wanted to hear all that Jesus had to say, and they wanted to know Jesus more. So many people crammed into that house that Jesus and his disciples can't even eat lunch. And it's not because they don't have enough food, or it's not because they don't have enough time. It's because there's so many people that they're too squished to even eat. But there's a smaller crowd that has something to say about Jesus. This crowd is made up of Jesus' mother and brothers and sisters. They weren't coming to Jesus because they wanted to hear what he had to say, but they were coming because they believed that he must be crazy. They wanted to seize Jesus and bring him home for his own protection. And there's a third crowd. This crowd is made up of the Pharisees. They have heard Jesus talk and they've seen Jesus act, and so they know Jesus is not crazy. They also knew that Jesus was undeniably powerful. So they explained that Jesus' powers weren't from God, but they were from the devil. They said it's by the prince of demons that he is driving out demons. Well, these comments about Jesus couldn't be further from the truth. Therefore, Jesus gives two parables that are meant to clarify who he is. Here's the first parable. Any kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. Therefore, if Satan is attacking himself, then he also cannot stand, which means that Satan's end is here. You get the meaning of the parable? Jesus is saying that not only are his ways different than Satan's, but they're completely opposite. If Jesus is really working for Satan, then the only conclusion is that Satan is experiencing a civil war. And civil wars always damage nations. Satan must be growing weaker. If the evil of this world is not getting less, then their conclusions must be wrong. And then Jesus tells another parable, one that is much harder to understand. Jesus says no one can go into a strong man's house without first tying him up. After the strong man is tied up, the house can be easily robbed. Did you get the meaning of this parable? Satan is the strong man, and Jesus is the one who robbed Satan's house. We know his house is being robbed because Satan is being robbed of the things that he values. Satan values diseases, but Jesus is curing the sick. Satan loves controlling people, but Jesus has been setting people free. Satan loves religious control, but Jesus has been showing the errors of the religious leaders. All this means that Satan is tied up because Jesus is stronger than the devil. Do you understand what Jesus did with these two parables? He demonstrated two things. First, he proved that his family is wrong because he's not crazy. Crazy people can't think as logically as Jesus does. Secondly, he proved that the Pharisees are wrong about him because he isn't doing evil, he's doing good. Today's story ends with us discovering what all of these other stories mean. As Jesus is teaching, his family arrives, but they can't get through the crowds in order to get to Jesus. But they pass a message through the crowd until it finally gets up to Jesus. And Jesus doesn't invite them in, nor does he go out to greet them. Instead, Jesus looks at the crowd of people around him and he says, "You are my family. My family are not those who call me crazy or evil. My family are those who do the will of God." This means that knowing of Jesus is pointless if you don't believe Jesus' teachings. When you recognize that Jesus is the Messiah, and when you live like he did, then you become a part of Jesus' family. Everyone else is just working against Jesus, which means that they are working against God, which means that they are guilty of the unforgivable sin. This is not what Jesus wants. Jesus came down from heaven so that all rebellious children could join his family. He willingly sacrificed his life so that his broken family could be made whole. This was done for you.